Oh, yes? Is that how this is supposed to start? Is that how I'm supposed to do this? Welcome into Snow The Goalie, the only Flyers podcast. I'm trying to be like Russ Joy, who is on a beach in North Carolina, perfectly timed vacation on the night of the NHL Draft when the Flyers have 2 first-round picks, a lot of stuff going on. And look, Russ is in the comments. Intern Andrew, Russ is in the comments, like excited that we started the show.
We actually got it
without him, right?
Well, do you want to peek behind the curtain? We almost weren't on time, though.
Yes, we almost weren't. I had a computer issue that I had to, had to resolve. I admit it, but we did get here on time and we were able to get it going. But welcome into the special Draft Night podcast. I'm your host, Anthony SanFilippo, joined by intern Andrew on camera for this event, because Bundy is also unavailable tonight. And so no Russ, no Bundy. There's no other way to go, in my mind, than to the iconic Bill Meltzer to be here as part of our draft coverage tonight. So, Bill, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of the Snow the Goalie family tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure, guys.
I appreciate having you here. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of conversations around the NHL today. Flyers trying to move up. They may move up. They may move down. We'll see what ends up happening. But first and foremost, before we really get started, I know that the broadcast is just getting started if you're watching it over on ESPN. Some news for the Flyers. And by the way, just before we get to the news, a lot of people might be wondering, why we're doing this from home. Geez, I guess the draft should probably be on location somewhere, have some kind of draft party. We didn't think we were going to have anything because of the whole Russ Bundy situation. So it was just like, we'll just kind of, I'll just do some stuff on Twitter or whatever the case might be, and we'll do maybe a reaction show after the draft was over. And then I got the idea to ask Bill. So it was great that Bill was able to join us. All right, here's the news. As expected, Flyers cut ties with Cam Atkinson today. They put him on waivers, technically with the intention of buying out his contract. Here's some breaking news for you. Nobody's going to claim that contract, right? So he will be bought out, and the Flyers will have to put that money on their cap. They'll get a little bit of cap relief this year, but about $1.75 million will remain on their cap for next year. It's not the most ideal situation, but Bill, they had an opportunity to trade him to the San Jose Sharks a couple weeks ago, or a little over a week ago, I should say. And Cam has a modified no trade clause and used it to say, no, I won't go to San Jose. So Danny Briere's kind of left with his hands tied at that point. Yeah. No, there's nowhere to trade him. What are you going to do? They don't want him on. They don't want to have him on the team next year because it really kind of slows development for some other players. So they don't really have a choice, right, other than to buy him out.
No, for sure. And the role that the Cam ended up playing in the second half of the season, mostly fourth line, in and out of the lineup, it wasn't good for the team. It wasn't good for him either. He's the kind of player, the kind of role he was playing, particularly, these guys who's used to killing penalties. He wasn't even on the PK very much at that point. So, what was best for him and for the team was to part ways. If you guys remember on exit day, though, the die was already cast. I mean, Cam was already saying, he thinks he still has something in the tank for the right situation. As soon as somebody says the right situation, your ears perk up. Because he's not talking about where he is at the time. I think he's in kind of a little bit of a precarious spot. I think he'll have interest from clubs, as an unrestricted free agent. But it'll be a 1-year kind of a prove-it deal. Let's be honest. Cam needs to go to a situation. He wants to win. But if he goes to a contender, is he likely still to be a power play guy? Is he likely to get heavy ice time? Or is he going to be a secondary kind of depth piece where, maybe he's a valuable piece in the locker room, positive attitude, all those things about Cam as a person, all the intangibles. But when he hits the market in another year from now, is he going to have the numbers that go with it? Going to get more than a tryout kind of an arrangement. I hope it works for him. I mean, Cam's such an easy guy to root for. but it's I think it's a tough call all the way around. I know where he would like to go. Obviously, San Jose. San Jose probably would have tried to move him towards the deadline too.
Right.
But it's something where he knows he's getting on his career. He wants to go somewhere where he has a chance to win, even in a reduced role. So, the Flyers' hands were a little bit tied here, between having missed the whole year and having basically fallen off the map after the middle of November. Remember, he started out pretty well, but it just fell apart for him as the season went along. So, I think for all parties involved, they kind of did what they had to do.
Yeah, so, and not only that, I'm sorry, Andrew. I'll come to let you go in a second. The one other thing I just wanted to add, little thing I wanted to add to that is it's probably better for Cam in this way, in a sense that now a team that will think about signing him only has to sign him for the league minimum because he's getting paid by the Flyers anyway, right? So it really does work out. And there is one other thing I kind of want to get into with you, Bill, about this. But Andrew, you were about to say something. I want to give you the floor.
So is the fact that the Sharks have the number 1 pick and we're minutes away from then taking Celebrini, is that not appealing enough to him for him to want to go there? Is he just at the point where he's 35 years old now and thinks San Jose is just too far away from being a legitimate contender before they build this whole thing up again? Or
well, that's part of it. But here's the thing I wanted to bring up. This is a good segue, and you didn't even know you were segueing into what I wanted to talk about this. But this is kind of
professional.
Yeah, you're. This is a good segue. The reality of it is that teams players around the league that have these no movement clauses, even modified no movement clauses or modified no trade clauses, they can make a list of teams that they can't go to. What I think is becoming a bit of an issue in the NHL is the same teams seem to be appearing on most of these no trade clauses or most of these no movement clauses. And it doesn't have anything to do, I shouldn't say anything. I mean, in some cases it does, but the majority of the time it doesn't have anything to do with the team's ability to be competitive or field a competitive team or be a contender for a Stanley Cup. But it has everything to do with the tax rate in that state or that province, as if we're talking about Canada. If you look at most of these no movement clauses, they are to Canadian teams and California. Teams don't want to play there because you could just as easily go to Florida and play tax-free as opposed to going and playing in San Jose where you're going to lose 30% of your salary to taxes. So it's a big deal, and it's something that salary capped leagues have to take into consideration, I think, when they're looking at how this plays out, especially in a sport like hockey, where once you go somewhere, especially with a longer term deal, you're kind of locked in for that. So,
yeah, and Dallas being another team where there's no income tax in Texas, so they're able to attract players. I also think it plays into it with some players, and I think it plays into it a little bit with Cam. But there's an addendum to it. Cam, even when he came to Philly, he kept his house in Columbus. That still is his home. He has 2 young children. One's still a baby. I mean, I don't think he wants to pack up the whole family and move it out to California. I was told, however, that going back to Columbus really wasn't an appealing option to him. Just apparently he felt like that ship had sailed a little bit. Because I thought, well, maybe the Flyers eat half of it, right? And you trade him to Columbus for a year. I thought that maybe there's a fit there, and I was told that that there wasn't a place he especially wanted to go, but he's going to keep his home in Columbus. So that I think is if he can stay in the Eastern Conference, find a right spot, and not constantly traveling back and forth. I think that's a piece of it too.
Andrew, do me a favor, take a couple questions from the crowd for Bill. I have somebody at my front door. I got to go answer it. I'll be right back.
Okay. Oh, jeez. Well, first of all, people. I know you don't have the audio on right now, but apparently people are tweeting out that Bettman is getting the crap boot out of him right now.
Like always.
So here, we'll take questions from the comments in just a second. Apparently they just replaced the All-Star game altogether, and they're doing this Nations thing.
Yeah.
That is. I don't know if I like that.
They've tinkered with the format so many times, Andrew. Remember when it was Europe against North America? For a little while, the 3-on-3 seemed to have some intrigue, and that kind of seems to have run its course in more recent years. You're never going to go back to the days where the Stanley Cup champions play an all-star team and the players cared about winning, and there were roughing and fights in those games because winning actually meant something. You'll never have those days come back. So whatever you're doing is gonna, it's gonna be kind of a watered down version of hockey. To be honest, I don't especially enjoy the All-Star game. I do enjoy elements of the skills competition, at least the traditional competitions. But I think you're gonna always be tinkering with whatever the All-Star format is. I don't know. What do you think, Adam?
I guess, yeah, but they announced the rosters, I guess yesterday or 2 days ago. I mean, they have legitimately great players that are going to be participating in this. So I don't really know what the difference is. It's just people representing countries as opposed to their divisions. But I don't know, whatever. I also found the skills competition last year I actually thought was pretty competitive. Other than Nikita Kucherov, they all cared a great deal about it, I thought. So obviously when it was 5-a-side, Eastern Conference, Western Conference, that was just unwatchable. I can't believe the NBA still hasn't figured it out and try something different with that. But whatever, that was just something that was on. I didn't even realize that until yesterday. I saw it going around that. So what is it's Sweden, Finland, United States, and Canada.
Yeah, and you've had, of course, the Canada Cup and the World Cup of hockey and whatever, and it's good hockey usually, right? It's hard when you interrupt the middle of the season though, and then you're missing so much time from the season. There's always a little bit of a carryover effect afterwards too. But the Players Association wants it, and so I think hopefully it'll be a good event. Hopefully it'll take off from there. But to me, it's a pretty long break in the season. I don't love the long interruption.
Yeah, and now 2026 back in the Olympics finally.
That's right. Yeah.
That also. So I don't remember where we were. Do we should we get into this stuff with the speaking of Cam Atkinson being a former Blue Jacket? Anthony, you tweeted out earlier today about the Flyers. I guess Briere was pretty aggressively trying to go after that 4th overall pick, couldn't get it done.
He really was aggressive about it, and the rationale is so they, Celebrini, I think, just got picked, right?
Shocker.
The draft is underway, or he's about to get picked. I think they're walking up to the stage now. So the thing about it is that they have some intel that Chicago at 2 is not going to take Demidov. And there's a lot of people who believe that Demidov is the second best prospect behind Celebrini in this draft. Anaheim at 3 is certainly not going to take another forward. They need defensemen, and they're going defense no matter what.
I think they're going to take Salayev.
Right. So you're looking at pick 4 as a possibility to get to if you want Demidov. The Flyers are interested in getting up that high to get Demidov, but it's going to cost a fortune. They made an effort. Columbus wanted three first-round picks, which I think Danny was a little bit reluctant to give up 3, and I don't blame him for being reluctant to give up 3 first-round picks. But he was willing to offer 2 and a forward off of his roster. Now, I was not able to get confirmation on who the forward was. I had a name given to me that it was Farabee, but I don't know with 100% certainty. So that's not me reporting that it was Farabee. Yeah. But he certainly offered 12, the Colorado first-round pick next season, and a forward for that spot. And Columbus turned it down. Yeah. I believe Columbus has another team that if they want to move off of 4, they will trade with, and I believe that other team is Carolina.
Right.
So that's kind of where everything kind of went over the last day and a half. with the Flyers trying to get up to 4. That doesn't mean they're done. I think Briere is trying to still get up higher.
Yep.
There's another player that they like too. It's Sam Dickinson, the defenseman from London. So I think if there's a chance to get to that 6, 7, 8 range to pick him if he's there, I think that's a possibility still. But I don't think that there's any way now that they're going to get into position to be able to draft Demi now.
Yeah, from what I heard, the Flyers have looked at guys they liked in several different ranges of moving up, right? Mm-hmm. For that 6, 7 kind of range. At one point, there was even a little talk with Buffalo if they could work something where they're picking 11th and 12th, and that didn't pan out. Obviously, Buffalo ended up moving it. It's not like they've been sitting in their hands, though. They've been looking at a lot of possibilities that will enable them to move up and players they like. I think some of the backdrop here too is that even at 12, I think they should get a pretty good player still. And if they move down a little bit, and I'm not going to be coy on it, I think if they move down a little bit and they want Cole Yzerman, I think he'll be there for him. He's kind of a divisive player, but the Flyers can certainly use guys who can score. If you could pick up other assets with it, I think that might be a, maybe not a plan A, but that might be a possibility around 12. I had them taking Hellenius because I think and I think they like Catton, but I don't think he gets them. I think that trade above them kind of precludes that. So I don't think Catton will be there. Also, there's some questions, and it seems like anytime there's a smaller forward who plays center, there's always a question: is he going to be a center? Or is he going to be a winger in the NHL? Again, I don't care if the guy can play. He can play. If he plays on a wing, that's fine, right? Because you need top 6 guys or top 6 guys. I see the comment on there that there's a forwards there at 12. They go defense.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I think all things being equal, things kind of shake out. Particularly the defense. If the draft is defense heavy, as some say it'll be, I think there might be forwards they like better as best available player.
The one thing I will say, and you mentioned them trading back, and I know that that's something that Danny's considering. They really like the Norwegian defenseman Solberg.
Yeah.
They like him a lot. And so if you're sitting at 12 and you feel like a team wants to, that's behind you and you have to move back 4 or 5 spots, but you can get something else out of it, whether it's another pick this year, another first rounder next year, or something, anything, right? That's of real value. Maybe you go back far enough that you don't have Yzerman still on the board, but you could get the kid Solberg, who you like, and look at and say, here's a shutdown kind of guy that we can get still in the later first round. That's a defenseman. And now all of a sudden you got 2 really young first-round defensemen coming in Bonk and Solberg, if that would be the guy that they would go to.
Yeah, for sure. And Solberg has been one of those names that's kind of been just under the radar screen a little bit. I think 12 is a reach to take him there, but if you move back, as long as you're not I say that, but I certainly didn't expect Bonk to suddenly become a power play guy this year. I described him as a pretty conservative pick, and I wasn't expecting to be a bumper guy all of a sudden scoring all these goals. So sometimes you never know what's going to happen in development, but you project him as being a defensive guy, a shutdown guy, a guy who had some physicality. He can skate. I mean, it's a pick you can justify a little later in the first round. So I think that kind of thing would be on the board for them.
Yeah, the other move that was discussed that kind of leaked out last week from TSN was a trade with the Ottawa Senators to get to 7. And at the time, I looked into it, and it was a legit offer, although both sides were denying that there was a deal, which there was no deal. So I guess them denying was not particularly giving misinformation. Yeah. It just wasn't the full story. And what the full story ended up being is that it was basically a plan B for Ottawa. And so this was all before the trade for Linus Ullmark. where they ended up giving up 24 in that trade with Boston. They were going to, if they weren't able to get that deal done, then they were going to work with the Flyers to drop down from 7 to 12 and pick up a player who I believe would have been Scott Laughton. So I think that was the deal that was on the table there that did not come to fruition. And the plan at that time, I think Briere was looking at it saying, if I get to 7, it'll be easier for me to get to 4.
Yeah.
To get the pick,
right.
to get the Demidov pick, to pick a Demidov. But if I'm at 12, then I'm going to have to give up a lot more to get there. And that's why they didn't. So he tried, I think, 2 different paths to get there and didn't quite make it. Nevertheless, I bring that trade up that fell through, Bill, because Scott Laughton's name was in that. We kind of believe Farabee's name was in the conversation with Columbus. How many of these guys that, the Flyers are willing to move on from, how many of them ultimately get moved this summer, even if it's not tonight/tomorrow at the draft, maybe leading into Monday and the start of free agency?
I think that they'll stay on the table.
Yeah.
Like they particularly with Ottawa, and it's had various incarnations, various rumors, right? Yeah. But this goes back at least to January. There was a lot of smoke about talks with Ottawa going all the way back to the beginning of this year, and so at least different concepts have been kicked around. So even if it doesn't happen for tied into a draft pick right now, I could still see something happening where some of these pieces get moved. I think the Flyers recognize that they still have particularly really 2 areas, right? They'd like to add another top 4 defenseman if they can. That's not a secret. When they lost Walker, it hurt them. It hurt them the rest of the last season. They still need another center. They still need another center. Listen, it's so much easier said than done to get a true first line center. Yeah, good luck on that in most cases. But if you can add more depth down the middle, right? And Danny's used that word a lot. It's kind of diversifying your roster a little bit. I think they would like to do that. So I think that they'll keep kicking around ideas. And there's also Flyers also have 2 first-round picks next year, and depending on what Columbus does with their first rounder this year, Flyers could have 2 second-rounders next year too. So they have some ground to be able to make some moves.
So their intel was correct. Chicago does take Levshunov.
Okay.
So Demidov will certainly fall to 4. Question is, will Columbus take him? Will they trade their pick? Will he fall to 5 to Montreal, who a lot of talk was coming out of Canada? TSN was reporting today that the Canadians were even active in conversations about possibly moving down. I can't imagine what their fan base would do if they traded out of 5 and somebody jumped up and got Demidov, and for the second year in a row, they lost a Russian player.
So that was going to be my next question. Isn't the fact that the Flyers and I guess namely Briere, the fact that they were able to get Michkov over here as quickly as they did, don't those teams like the Anaheims and the San Jose's and Montreal's from last year and Arizona, now Utah, didn't they learn and be like, maybe we should take a chance on this Russian guy? And, because Michkov, if I'm remembering correctly, was the 2nd or 3rd prospect of the draft last year and then dropped to 7. So they didn't after seeing that the Flyers literally just a week ago announced that we were bringing him back stateside, they didn't think maybe he's the best available player and we should take a chance on him and get him.
Bill?
I think with Russian players, it still is very much a case-by-case basis and a very team-by-team basis. The Flyers have some advantages. They've actually established some advantages in Russia. I mean, for one thing, the Flyers have a North American scout, but he lives in Russia and he scouts full time in Russia, and he has good relationships over there, and he's trusted over here. I'm talking about Ken Hudikoff. So the Flyers have a pretty good pipeline as to, he's connected to agents, connected with teams. Who they'll work with to help bring over. I mean, if you remember last year, there were teams Michkov didn't even really want to talk to.
Right.
He was already interested in coming to Philly. I do think a team that's smart works on getting boots in the ground in Russia and developing some of these relationships to where there's, listen, I mean, Demidov will be over at some point. Will it be 1 year, 2 years? I don't know, but it seems to be another guy who's potentially worth the wait. So it's not a bad question, but I really think it depends on the organization in question and the particular player.
Yeah. Ducks are on the clock now, and there's a lot of rumor flying out there about who this team's going to take. We all thought Silyev would be the guy. Then there was talk about it being Bennett Seneke a little bit, which is kind of a surprise.
Yeah. I heard Zane Parekh as well.
Well, that too, but there are some people that are saying now that it's going to be Seneke, which would floor me, because I thought that he was a guy who might be there around the time the Flyers are picking. It's really going to this pick could dictate how every domino now falls thereafter. I think this is that pivot point for the draft.
Yeah, usually there's some off the board selection. The thing with Seneca is that he was a big riser in the second half, and not to stereotype, but he's the kind of prospect that Canadian scouts tend to like, right? He has a body type they tend to like. There's a lot of projection with him, though. So you're really taking a leap of faith that what you saw in the second half, he's going to start there and keep building. I personally wouldn't be comfortable taking him that early, but he's a name that you hear a lot as a guy who really just jumped up in the ratings in the second half. And Silya was a name you heard might drop. I was always a little skeptical of that, but if they go forward here and they go for the big winger, I think it does. It shakes up the board.
So a lot of people have been asking about, if any of us have heard anything about the schedule for next year. When are the Ducks coming? Because everybody wants to be here for Cutter Gautier's game. Yeah. I don't have anything official, but there's two things that I kind of think are going to happen. One, I think the Flyers are knowing that the Phillies are going to probably be playing in October this year. I think that the Flyers probably requested some early road games. So I wouldn't be surprised if they start out west on a trip before they start at home. So they could end up playing the Ducks on the road first. And then I kind of think he's coming here around the time the trade happened a year ago. And I think it will be in January.
Yeah.
But I don't have anything specific on that. Nothing. It just kind of whispers that are kind of going around, and that's what I kind of think is going to happen. So just kind of keep that in your back pocket, and we'll see what happens.
That would be something.
We'll see what happens. It would be something if it's the day, like the anniversary. Like, would that be something? Same date? That would be a riot.
So when that happens, on a scale of 1 to Crosby, how hard does he get booed?
The Ducks just took Seneca, by the way.
Yep.
Did they really?
Yes. I am floored. I'm floored. Changes the entire layout of the draft now, because with Silya now, I mean, what does Columbus do? Are they going Lindstrom? Because I think that's who they like. Does Silyev fall, and then does Montreal look at it and go, "Oh shoot, do we go Silyev?" Or does he fall even further? Like, it's crazy. So like this whole draft has just changed completely with Anaheim taking Seneca.
Yeah,
I'm shocked.
I'm shocked too. I mean, I had him in my mock as 10th, which was higher than anywhere he was mid-season. Just to reference him jumping up. I didn't see him jumping up this high though.
It's crazy, and he's a smaller forward.
Yeah, has to fill out still.
182.
I think he's about 6'2", but he's still very thin.
Yeah,
Look at this guy. Oh my god.
He looks like my nephew. I mean, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
All right. Well, Beckett Seneca off the board.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a surprise. Hey, speaking of off the board, I figured this is a minute to talk about this, intern Andrew.
Yes, please.
We had we took part in the Snyder Hockey fantasy draft for the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
You are our chief researcher. And we ended up with the first pick. We drafted McDavid, who won the Conn Smythe, so it was the right pick. We finished fourth out of 19 teams, which is not bad. But your comment when that draft was happening was, if we don't win this thing, it's a total embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean, I was the one that said it, but we were all thinking it. Well, okay, so here's the other thing about our draft. We picked 3 Oilers, including McDavid, because we were trying to stack up on players that we thought were on a team that were going to go far.
Yeah.
And the Oilers made it to the very end. The issue is the other 2 Oilers we had were Evander Kane and Corey Perry. Corey Perry, I don't think, had a playoff point until the Stanley Cup final.
Correct. Well, he had a point. He had a goal in the final, but he had an assist in the semifinals. So
right. Okay. So that
was our last pick, by the way. It was the very end.
Yeah, so. But like if he actually like had a decent postseason, that could have been like the heist of the century, getting him.
I think our mistake was not recognizing the bonus points that defenseman got, because the highest scoring player in the fantasy league was Evan Bouchard.
It's Bouchard, yeah.
So I think that was a thing that we needed to next year we need to take that into consideration and draft some defensemen, unlike the Anaheim Ducks, who chose not to draft a team that is lacking completely in defense and defensive prospects continues to take a bunch of wingers, which is really fascinating to me.
Interesting transition here while we were talking about the playoffs.
Yeah.
As only I do, I wrote a couple trivia questions, and I think it might be time for one.
Oh, already?
If you guys,
I love intern Andrew trivia
before the Blue Jackets make the pick here.
Yeah.
Can you, since it is the draft, can you guys name the 3 most recent players who were former number 1 overall picks to win the Stanley Cup?
Ekblad just won it, so
that is one. Yes, and honor system here. You're not allowed to look at the comments.
Yeah.
Okay. Stamkos.
Yes.
Is the third one? What's his name? Defenseman. For Vegas and St. Louis. Why am I forgetting his name? Bill, help me out. He was the captain of the Blues when they won the Stanley Cup.
Oh, jeez.
He's on Vegas too.
Yeah. But he didn't go first though, did he? I'm thinking Pietrangelo, but he didn't go first.
Is it Pietrangelo? No,
he was a 4th overall pick.
He was 4th overall.
Yes.
So then that has to be McKinnon.
It is
Nathan McKinnon. Yeah.
Okay. And McKinnon. Yeah.
That was one. I have 3 other ones that I will sprinkle.
All right, that's good. It's good to get the first one out here. You know, it's 3 picks in. That's a good spot to go.
You actually, while you were hinting at Alex Pietrangelo, I had a little bit of a panic attack because I didn't have him written down. I was like, oh my god,
he went 4th.
I knew he was a high pick.
I remember if he was where he was. What do you think Columbus does here, Bill? I mean, they've been the center of attention for a few days about this pick. So
I still think, at some point you have to go Demidov right here. And the thing with Lindstrom, I know the big center and highly skilled and all that. I'm a little worried about how much time he missed with a back injury, at 17, 18 years old.
Yep.
Which isn't to say he won't be fine, but I'd have a little concern about it. So.
Do you think that with Don Waddell there now, since he built what he did with Carolina was all about defense? He looks at the defense now.
Looks maybe he does. Maybe he does.
Goes to Cilio.
Yeah, we're gonna find out in a second. So
yeah,
doesn't appear a trade has been made.
No, it looks like they're going to make the pick. They have a jersey ready. So
all that for nothing.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just Columbus management being too stingy?
They wanted King's ransom. And I get it. I get it. Right. I mean, if you have that pick and you're like, well, someone wants to get up here, we got to give us a lot to get off of it.
Yeah.
Friedman just tweeted they took Lindstrom.
Yeah, they took Lindstrom.
Okay.
Lindstrom. Okay. So he's still on the board. So
Demidov falls again.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get it. Because, Lindstrom is that prototype big center. Teams look for that big skilled center.
Yep.
And they're, they're going to cross their fingers a little bit health-wise. He tested well at the combine, so maybe that settled some fears in. But it's not zero risk either.
No. So now we go to Montreal, and this is interesting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure Montreal's going to go Demidov with Cilio still there. I'm just not sure. I don't know.
Last year they just passed the Mitchkov, right? A year ago. It was sitting there for them. They didn't do it.
That's what I'm saying.
Now they're defending the and listen, I think the Swiss defenseman they picked is Rydbacher's going to be a good player and all that.
Yeah.
But I think Mitchkov is going to be a star. So
it's going to be interesting. I think this is where the draft gets fascinating because we spend all this time, right, looking at it, trying to figure it out. People are working the phones and trying to see where teams are. And I think that a lot of teams like to mislead sometimes. They don't want you to really know what they're thinking, but they'll leak some stuff out and then, they'll leak it to multiple places. And then you start hearing it and, in two different cities and like, well, yeah, I heard it too. And you heard it too. We're like, oh, okay, great. So here we go. This must be what it is. And then it changes. It completely changes. Seneca is a perfect example, right? That's a perfect example. Like no one had him that high.
Right. Exactly. They could have figured Lindstrom's already off the board for them, right?
Yeah.
And he's still there. Well, we got to change on the fly. We got to take him, right?
Yeah.
So,
Frank Saravalli just tweeted that the Habs will make the pick. Okay. They're not trading the pick.
By the way, Seneca getting drafted at number 3, that ruined Bill's perfect mock draft.
That's okay.
I think he was 2 for 2, and then
I don't know if there's anybody out there, and if anybody in the chat sees it and finds it, if anybody prior to maybe a couple hours ago had a mock draft that had Beckett, Seneca go
third, right,
please share. Because that's someone that I'm going to want to follow in the future.
Yeah. Yes. I want to know your predictions going forward. Exactly.
I want to know where that information's coming from.
Yeah.
So,
wondering if people in the Ducks organization didn't even know that was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the reaction, and a couple people in the comments were saying it, like the reaction on his face.
Yeah.
When he got picked, like they were stunned. They were totally stunned. No, that's great. That's good for the kid. The one thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle here is just how exciting this is for these kids because they are kids. They're kids. They're high school aged kids. And, I know in some instances they come from, wealthier families sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And you sit there and go, okay, well, they were born on third base kind of thing, right? Like, I get it, but they don't quite grasp that concept. In their minds, they've busted their rear ends since they were 5 years old, playing a very difficult sport and becoming the best at it at their age. And here they are, as high school age kids being drafted into the best professional league of their sport in the world. It's pretty awesome for them. It really is. So
and for the parents too, right? How many mornings at 5 a.m. were they driving to the rink, tying and with a real little tying their skates, with freezing hands, and and there's no promise of any kind of a pro career. It's just because it's just a passion they're pursuing, and it's a dream long term. So it's always pretty cool to see. I totally agree. One of my favorite things to watch, actually.
Yeah.
This is actually
very funny. Here's one other question, Bill. Let's say Montreal does not take Demidov here. How interesting do things all of a sudden get for the Flyers to potentially continue to try and get higher, get to one of these picks that's above 12 to draft this guy who is sliding that they really like?
I think you 100% circle back, right?
Yeah.
Circle back on these things. And
Utah. Like you're on the phone with Utah like now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't go here. We're making a deal. Like, let's get it done.
Yeah. Exactly.
People are saying in the comments that they're saying on TV that Montreal may take Tij Ginla.
Well, you know what? He's been flying up boards, and I actually talked to a scout a couple weeks ago when Iginla's name was coming up higher and higher and higher, and he goes, "I'll be honest, I don't get it."
Yeah,
like he's going to be a good player, but he's not top 10 first round player.
Right.
And I think a lot of teams are getting caught up in the
last
lineage.
Name.
Yes, the lineage.
Exactly. And he's not that same kind of player at all. Good young player, right?
Yeah.
But he's not that power forward dominating type that his dad was.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but the pick is coming. I got to think that they go Demidov. I'd be stunned if they don't do it again. So they're making
you guys might be ahead of me.
Not that I have volume on. I can't hear it. I'm just going.
I'm trying to read lips here.
I'm a terrible lip reader.
Yeah, they're probably thanking everybody and congratulating everybody like they do.
In both languages, yeah.
So
people are going off about the Sphere, though. I'll say that much. People love it.
Who are they bringing on to make this pick? Celine Dion.
Huh.
You think Celine Dion can pronounce Demidov?
I don't think so.
Get the name right?
Well, I would have to imagine that they gave her like a quick rundown beforehand, just to make sure. You don't want it to be like did you see the video of the woman from Thomas Jefferson University trying to read the graduating class? She couldn't pronounce any of the names.
Yes. Yeah. It was right before my daughter graduated from University of Delaware. And I said to her, I hope they don't screw up your name like they did at Thomas Jefferson. She said they did it's an AI voice, and they made her listen to it first before make sure that it was okay.
Okay.
And then they entered it into the system, right? So
by the way, Russ just tweeted, "I'll hate the Canadians if they make me hate Celine Dion." That's good to know his priorities in her life.
Russ, who told us he was out to dinner on vacation, is why he couldn't be on the show.
That's right.
Is watching the draft.
Yeah, he couldn't be distracted by us, so he could make those fire tweets.
Oh,
all right. It is Demidov.
Yeah, it is Demidov. Yeah. That's great. Well, Flyers knew that they had to get to 4. They probably knew that this was what Montreal wanted to do, and they couldn't get there. So it's Demidov to the Canadian, which kind of, and that's a good look. It's a good pick. All right, he's going to be a good player. The thing of it is that I almost think that they made this pick just so they didn't get booed again for screwing it up last year.
There may be truth in that.
Like, I really do. I think there's a little bit of that, right? I mean, I think there's a little bit of that in there. Not to say it's the deciding factor, but I think it's just a little bit of it. So, but yeah, they just got a really good player. Celia falling, man.
Yeah. So Utah's on the clock now, right?
Yes,
I'll spring
Utah.
the-
The first, and I can't imagine. Look, could you imagine if you're in a brand new city, right? Everybody's excited. We got a brand new hockey team coming in. Yeah, the Utah hockey team, which, by the way, total disaster. How do you not have the name for the first year?
Yeah.
Right? Like, come on. You got to have the name the first year.
Talk to Washington. It takes longer than you think.
Oh, my God. Come on. It's just so bad. But anyway, Utah Hockey Club. And all right, everybody's excited. They're going to watch the draft. Who's going to be the first, player that we ever draft? And we trade the pick. Like, I can't imagine that happens. I got to think Utah's picking here. I really, really do.
Well, I was going to say is another segue into another trivia question I had.
Oh, you're going to go through the trivia questions before we even get
real fast. Yeah, that's all right.
Like, you're going to blow through them.
Well, I just mean because it's Utah specific. Well, not exactly, but it's about their former home in Phoenix, Arizona. So if you remember, draft day in 2015, the Flyers actually made a trade with the then Coyotes. And the Flyers received in this trade a couple of draft picks and a player. And then they sent over a player and a thing. I guess it's kind of hard to say what it is.
The thing
without giving it away. So, all right. Well, for starters, who did the Coyotes give to us?
So they made a trade at the 2015 draft with the Coyotes.
Yes.
It's a first round?
No, they were like third and fourth round.
Okay, so we're middle of the okay.
Yeah, but they received a player.
So I believe they traded Pronger's contract. Is that
right? That was the thing.
Oh, okay. All right. That's the thing. All right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what else was part of that deal.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Thinking back, I think I remember it. Was that when the Flyers ended up getting Sam Gagner?
Oh,
Sam Gagner.
Yes.
And so who was the Flyers player that they sent over to Phoenix?
2015. Was that Nick Cousins?
No, you got the first name right though.
Nick.
Oh, Nicholas Grossman.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, Nick Grossman. Yeah. Nick Grossman.
Yeah, who just he was just named the assistant coach of the Swedish national junior team. So,
good for him.
Really?
Congrats to Nick. Yep.
Nick Grossman.
Right, so I have one more question ready for that I will save for later.
Yeah, well, we're in our first commercial break. I'm impressed. I'll give even though these picks take longer than they really need to, and it's way too much pomp and circumstance. Just make a freaking pick. That's like this whole thing would be so much better if we just had picks and not all the nonsense that goes on around it. But that's beside the point. Still, considering the first pick didn't come until 7-12, 7-13. To be 5 picks in just over a half hour is not bad.
Yeah. No one's called timeout yet,
Right.
No one's called timeout to get on the phone. So that tends to slow things down.
Yeah.
Maybe it could still happen. We were talking about Dickinson, right? He's still on the board. So
yeah, I know the Flyers like him. I wonder how much of that, Bill, is the fact that he's in London. They got players that he plays with.
Yeah.
Blanc, right? And Barkey and Jonesy's got a great pipeline there with his relationship with the Hunters, and it's kind of like maybe you fall in love with the players on that team a little bit more.
Yeah.
I know that the scouts are scouting, right? And the scouts are going to sit there and say, yeah, well, it's a good player. We like this player. But that almost maybe makes it a little bit more like the interest a little bit higher just because of the other connections that you have there. And I sometimes worry a little bit about that. So I'm not saying that I don't like Dickinson. Dickinson could turn out look, I've only watched a few highlights of all of these top players, right? Other than that, I've not watched enough to really formulate an opinion, which is why I try to avoid them. But I just wonder if there's a little bit sometimes, and I think you see this in a lot of sports, especially football. We see it here in Philadelphia with they love the SEC players, and I understand why, but that sometimes you can maybe fall in love with something a little bit too much, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's a little bit of that. So,
There is, and also London's had so much success these past 2 years. Just won the OHL title. Just came down to a 1-goal game from the Memorial Cup, so they watch them a lot too, which can have it can also have the opposite effect sometimes too. Though sometimes you watch a player so much and you start nitpicking what their flaws are. Dickinson, I think is I think the thought is he could be a very complete defenseman. There's probably better defensive defensemen. There's you talked about Parake earlier, right? Guys who are maybe higher offensive defensemen, but in terms of the mix of doing everything well, I think that's what they're looking him as. So, that kind of player.
Interesting. It's interesting. Well, we'll see. I mean, they're about to make the pick. I know Gary had to do his big, welcome to youth, welcome Utah kind of thing. Yeah. But pick is coming in. They're about to make it. It'll be an interesting choice, I think. Oh, here we go. They got it's egging on the crowd. That's good stuff. Let's just keep doing all this stuff. Let's thank everybody.
How far is Salt Lake City from Vegas? That's not a bad drive, is it?
It's a few hours. I think LA is the closest city to Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah. LA or Phoenix. They took Tisha Ginla.
Did they?
Tisha Ginla.
That's
okay. I was buying into him going to Calgary. I actually thought that would have been cool.
Well, I was kind of hoping that he was at least available at that pick.
Yeah, I had him at Utah for 6. It was just as a but I don't know that he's going to end up playing center. He wants to play center next year. There's just a positional bias sometimes, guys. Sometimes a guy's a center. They think he could play center, or he's versatile enough to maybe switch center to wing. He did play more wing than center this year, and we mentioned the lineage too, right? The last name sells. So
it must be weird, playing your home games and you look up in the rafters and you see your dad's number 12 hanging above you. But that would have been interesting the day after the Lakers draft Bronny James. That would have been something.
Yes. Yeah. Although that the NBA version was, everybody knew it was coming. And so, like, for them to all kind of be surprised, like, oh, like it's such a dream come true. Oh, big surprise. Oh, like, stop it. Just stop. Everybody knew this was going to happen. So it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm surprised we're at pick 7 and Silyev is still there.
Silyev, Zeev Boyum still there.
Yes.
Zeev Boyum is still there. Yeah.
Yep.
And
he'll go. He should go pretty soon. I think he'll still go top 10. We'll see, but
Zeev's still there, right?
Zeev's still there. Yep.
I just said him. Yeah. I'll also say through 6 picks. Am I reading? There only one defenseman has been taken.
Yeah.
I thought for sure the top 10 was going to have way more defense.
Right, and what was hyped is a very defense-heavy draft, which means, of course, they're still on the board. So maybe a guy like Catton ends up falling into the Flyers' range. I don't know.
Well, so this is interesting now because you're probably going to have a run of teams here who are going to look at that fact that only one defenseman is gone and go, well, we can get ours. Like, maybe even Ottawa looks at it and goes, we could take the guy we like the best, the best defenseman that's left out there. And then that happens, and then each team behind them goes, oh, here comes the run. I better get it, better get the guy, better get it, right? And then it just goes on a little bit of a run there. So it's kind of fascinating. I have no idea where Ottawa's going to go at this point. Because
do you think they're still shopping that pick?
Interesting. No, I don't. I don't think so because they traded 24. If they didn't trade 24, then I think they would have traded this pick. But I don't think if you had 2 first-round picks, I don't think you're trading both of them, right? Yeah. That's kind of crazy to me. By the way, Frank tweeted out, Saravalli tweeted out that Stephen Ellis, who does their prospect analysis for Daily Faceoff, was 5 for 5, including Bennett Seneca going 3.
So, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Good job, Stephen. Yeah.
Yeah,
he knows his stuff. So
yeah, so that's pretty solid.
yeah,
Give him his props for that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I know. Not him.
Yeah, I love that's pretty funny actually. Not that one. This was the one he said. There you go. He says,
I
you
know.
know, no, Steven L. Steven L. So, yeah, I mean, you're looking at a group of defensemen here, and this is part of the reason why I think that the Flyers will trade down, because there's a group of defensemen. I know, and it's Andrew Harrison. It's Beckett Seneca. Yes, it's Beckett, not Bennett.
Oh, have you been saying Bennett this whole time? I didn't even notice.
I know it's Beckett, and maybe I've said Bennett. I don't know if it's just rolling. It's one of those malaprops, I guess. But with so many defensemen kind of sliding now to this point, Bill, this could be a situation where you look at it and go, yeah, like these guys are NHL caliber defensemen. We could get a little bit something extra for our pick, depending on how these next 3 or 4 spots go.
Yep. Yeah, and you don't have to look back too far. Was it 2019? The Flyers traded down a couple spots. They got Cam York out of it. They got a second round pick, and they traded up with the second round and got Bobby Brink out of that. So it was kind of a 2 for the price of 1 thing. Potentially you could do that, particularly, unfortunately, they don't know if they're picking 4th in the second round or in the middle of the second round. It's really up to Columbus. So, if they could pick up another asset.
That was one of the weirdest, conditions in a trade that I've ever seen. That Columbus has to let them know by 1 hour after the conclusion of the first round. It's just weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you have to prepare like you're making the pick. So
yeah, I wonder what they're going to do. It's going to be interesting to see. So Ottawa's up there now. They're thanking the world. See how that goes, and they're making their selection.
One of the things I loved about Clarkey was he got right to the point.
Yeah,
he didn't do the 1,000 thank yous. He just got right to the point with the draft.
Who was it?
Yakimchuk.
Carter Yakimchuk.
Mm.
I like that pick. Honestly, I kind of liked him a lot. Based off of what I saw, it's an interesting selection there by them. Again, changes the dynamics a little bit, right?
A little bit because a lot of these defensemen that were ahead of them are still on the board. I'll tell you with Yakimchuk and people that I know and trust. My concern with him, you get a guy who's big framed, had 30 goals this year, plays a nasty physical game at 120, but I think 120 penalty minutes.
Yeah,
plays that style that every team needs. So why is he not projected as? Why was he projected like borderline top 10? And the answer that I got was hockey sense concerns. That worries me sometimes because that can limit a player's ceiling sometimes. What he's likely to be. But in terms of physical tools, what elements that he brings, the big heavy shot, the physical play, and whatever, and his skating is improving. He's never going to be a Blazer, but he gets from point A to point B. So I get the pick, but I think there were, I don't know. We'll see I guess we'll see long term who ends up being the best defenseman out of this group. And you talking about a run happening. We might be into where there's a run now.
I was just thinking the same thing. I think that's what's going to happen. So I think probably the next best available forward is probably Hellenius. Maybe Catton.
I think it's Hellenius. Yeah. Well, I think it's Hellenius. Because I don't know. I think he's more of the guy that could play both ways, right? He could give you 200-foot game, whereas I'm not sure that Catton
He's the small center, right?
Yeah.
And some small centers are just fine, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
Marco Rossi's been a decent player so far. He's smaller than Cadden is. Saku Koivu was a small center. He was a hell of a player, right? I mean, the guys can make it, or if you move him to a wing again, that's fine. If a top 6 player is a top 6 player. I had Catton higher just in pure offensive upside. 116 points in a draft year for not a stacked team, truly. He wasn't on a London Knights kind of team where you're just surrounded by stars. So to me, that's hard to pass on. But if they get Hellenius, I take it 7 days a week.
Yeah,
because he's mentioned he plays that 2-way game. He is a very good playmaker, and playmaking centers still have a value. He's not the biggest guy, but he's sturdy. I think he will stay at center, and also has some leadership upside to him as well. He's shown it so far in Finland. So if you're getting that Lundell or best case scenario Saku Koivu kind of player, if it all works out the way, fantastic. You take that 10 times out of 10. So
for sure. I think that there might be. I know they like Dickinson. I know they like him. If he falls to 12, which would surprise me, then maybe they stay put.
Yeah,
maybe they do, because I think they thought he was going here. I think that's who they thought Ottawa might, or maybe Seattle might take, which is why they wanted to jump up in front of them to the Ottawa spot.
I think so. I think so as well. I think the last thing I'll say with Hellenius is that he's one of those guys that the more you watch him, the more you appreciate him, because he just always seems to make the right play, goes to the right places on the ice. He's more surgical than spectacular. So, there's not going to be highlights where he's dangling around 3 guys and then dishing in an open guy and there's a slam dunk. He'll make a nice pass as soon as he sees an opening, So I do think he's a very good player. I know I see some people commenting on Yzerman. I don't see the Flyers going for Yzerman as well, especially the way the board is falling right now.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either. I know that they were impressed by him. They met with him a couple times. I know that. But I think that the way that the board is going, I think that they probably have a number of these defensemen ahead of him. And so I think that things change. Things change on draft night, right? And I don't know. We'll see. I mean,
Siljev's still on the board here. Buium, Parake, right? Dickinson. That's a pretty good run right there. Takes you right out to where the Flyers are. So.
4 more defensemen.
Yeah.
That were a lot of people all thought were going to go before the Flyers would pick are still there.
Yeah.
To me, that's, I don't know. I can see it happen. So Seattle's up. They're about to make their selection. Who's coming out to make the pick for them?
I don't know who that is.
Oh, Beniers.
Is that Matty Beniers?
Matty Beniers, yeah.
Yeah. They take Berkeley Catton.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Intern Andrew's disappointed.
I wanted him.
Oh, I get it, right? Again, you don't get 116 points your draft year by mistake. There's a ton of skill and creativity there, and it would be a very fun player. I didn't think he would make it quite to 12, but he ended up. He's going 8th. I think I had him 8th, but just by happenstance, it's just a general range.
Yeah,
I did. I had him at 8th. Yeah,
you did. You got that one right.
Yeah, for once, right?
Oh, I had no idea his cousin was Corey Sarich. That's an interesting. Hey, you know what? There's always these. I shouldn't be surprised because everybody seems to be related to somebody in hockey, right? I mean, it's such
It's pretty. You go in that elite prospects page,
yeah,
and almost everybody has relatives that are, around the game.
So, yeah, the defense. I don't know, Bill. I am shocked in a draft that that so many people said was full of defensive prospects.
Yeah.
That were going into pick 9, and only one of the defensemen has been
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a wide open board here.
Yeah, I mean, you could stay at 12 and get one of the top 5 defensemen in the draft at this point. I don't know. Is it 4 in a row? Again, Hellenius is the one guy who is interesting, but the more Dickinson falls, the more I think that they would take him at 12 if he's there.
I think there's a pretty good chance. At least there'd be a lot of discussion at the table as to, but they're going to go. They'll go by their list who's highest there, and I'm pretty sure that a couple of these guys were higher on the list that they're actually going. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have to, I think, reconsider a little bit where they end up going. Just to tell a story from the draft table, back in 2011, the Flyers liked a defenseman in the front, but they had just traded Richards and Carter, and so was Jonas Brodin was on the top of their list, and Homer gets to the table and he says, "Guys, we need to rethink this. We just traded 2 centers here, right? Couturier is still on the board. That needs to be our pick. We had him higher. Don't." Brodin's going to be a good defenseman. Stay, you need to switch your list, and they did, obviously. And I guess you couldn't have gone too wrong with Brodin. He's been a really good defenseman, but that's a case. That's an example where right at the table, right before you pick, you decide we need to rethink this a little bit.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, hey, look, that's what a general manager's job is to ultimately be the person who has to make the last call. You do want to trust your scouts and your people that are in charge. The one thing I can say about Homer, as someone who sat in some of their draft meetings when they did this with the year they took Sam Moran, he is a guy who was a guy who was willing to listen, but he also was a guy who offered options. And so, well, okay, we like this guy, but what if this happens? Or what if we went this way? How different do things look? And he was very hands-on in that regard, which I think is the difference between that and then what happened we lost intern Andrew. I don't know what happened. I'm going to pull him out until he gets his thing fixed. Difference between what he did and then what Hextall does when he takes Nolan Patrick, that conversation's not even had at the table, Bill.
No.
Right? That's the difference between the two. He just goes rogue. He doesn't say, team, let's rethink this. He just says, screw it. I'm taking.
That was, I mean, and he had a very, very small circle. Sarge. He would bounce things off of Sarge, off of Pryor, off of Chris Pryor, and had a lot of faith in him. But generally, no. It was pretty limited input. And the word was even early on, right? That the Flyers liked a couple players. The consensus was players other than Patrick.
Yeah, but Heiskanen was the name that they really liked.
Heiskanen was one of the guys that they liked, and there was a small minority there, but it's but to go with a junior A player, right? I mean, Colorado had guts to do that, and it certainly has paid off for them. But sometimes sometimes you don't want to. Oh well, gee, he's dominated at the low level competition and whatever. So
yeah, Calgary's taking Parikh here. So, wow.
Wow. He's still
I am floored. I'm floored, Bill. I think that the Flyers have to change their mind at this point. Like, there's one more pick that you have to see what happens beforehand. But if the next pick is not Silayev or Dickinson, you almost have to stay at 12 and take one of them.
I think so. I think you do.
Right?
These were guys you're willing to trade up to around 7
to
grab.
Right?
So if he's there in 12 with no move, and you still have all your other assets, I think you have to move. I agree with you. You have to grab it.
Yeah.
Parikh is such. I mean, he's a roving defenseman, right? He's the Brent Bird's kind of guy who's going to put up huge numbers. The question is always, okay, how is he in his own end of the ice? And that's a question mark. But I'll tell you what, I will say this. I did, if he had gotten to 12, just how needy the Flyers power play is.
Yeah.
Once again, that's something they would have had to at least think about. So
I don't know. I look at Parikh and I think he's got Gostis Bear written all over him.
Yeah.
I mean, just my take on it. Like that he's that kind of player. But hey, good for him. Good for him at,
Yeah, I'm always, I'm leery of that kind of a player, particularly early in the draft. But, at a certain point, if you're projecting, he puts up a lot of points from the back end. And I which is great. I think the amount of time that he, ends up at the front of the rush and doesn't necessarily have support behind him, that doesn't necessarily play. But it'll be interesting to see how he's coached and how he develops. So,
I don't know what the Devils are going to do. I have no idea. Yeah. This is a team that I really had no inkling of where they would go. Like, this was one who was just like, no idea.
I had them with Seneca. Obviously, he's gone a long time ago now. So
yeah,
I'm not sure where they're headed with this.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's talk about Silayev a little bit. If he's there at 12, do you take another swing? Because he's another one, it's another contract situation. Do you take another swing on that and say, here's a guy that probably should have been the first defenseman taken, and he falls to us, and we make that pick, even though teams probably passed on him because of his situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought he was going to go earlier just because of his physical profile, right? Teams are always looking for that unicorn type.
Yeah.
Maybe they aren't confident he's going to approach this ceiling. I don't know. You hear whispers of a guy falling. I wasn't expecting falling towards. You're getting in the middle, the second round here. I think you have to think about him. I don't. Obviously, we're not privy to their internal rankings. I think if it's close, they might stand pat, and if Dickinson's there, go with him, or even go with the forward still. But if you have him, if you have him after Levshunov as your number 2 defenseman, let's say, then I think again you have to really think about it. I mean, the thing about it is that he brings the size and he has skill, and you don't often find a player with his package of skills at his size and his physical profile. I know there's some leaps of faith. There's a lot of development to go. If it hits, if it connects, what do you have, right? You have a star. So, sometimes you have to take that risk, and if you miss, you miss sometimes. There's safer picks that are up there.
So, Andrew, did you resolve Potato Cam yet? Obviously not, because you can't hear me, can you?
Mm.
He's freezing again.
Yep.
What is your internet speed, Andrew? Like minus 20?
Okay, he moved. He's not frozen in place.
Yeah, but he can't hear us. He can't hear us.
He can't hear us.
I'm gonna pull him out again until it's resolved. K-Dub, thanks for the comment there. 8-bit Andrew, which is hysterical. That's absolutely right. And mom's checking in. Yeah, Andrew's mom. He's trying. I know he's trying, Deirdre. I know. You guys need better internet in that house. That's what you need. That's what you need. Anyway, so the Devils are up there and they're about to make their pick. Should be this is going to dictate a lot of what the Flyers do right here. So we'll see. And they took Silayev.
All right.
So
Dickinson's there and Hellenius is there. So, boy, that's that you know, Flyers will get to play him 4 times a year when he makes it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a great pick. That's
You know, again, where do you find the guy 6'7" with the offensive upside?
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, is there risk? There's a risk. He's a risky pick in some degrees, but you know, everyone wants that unicorn. Well, they don't come along. Obviously, it's why they're called unicorns for a reason, right? They don't come along too often. So if they're available, and look how huge that dude is. My goodness.
Yeah.
He's up at the stage now.
He has a little bit of that Chara look to him, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And Chara's and it took him time to develop.
Right.
But he was sure worth the wait. Of course, he ended up being the wait for Ottawa because Mike Milbury screwed it up in the Islanders. They didn't wait long enough on him. But yeah, I mean, everybody wants that Chara type. So
yeah. I got to think the Sharks jumping into this spot. Why did they? And they did it early.
Yeah.
So why did they jump ahead of the Flyers? Like, what did they know about the Flyers that they wanted to get to this spot? You take Celebrini number 1 overall. Are you looking at a defenseman here that you think that the Flyers were going to take?
Well, one of Bowie and Moore Dickinson is going to be there just by the process of elimination here,
right?
You know, so
but I'm just but my curiosity is, what do the Sharks think that the Flyers were going to take? That they felt the need to get
they had to jump over them to
yes. So that's what
Buffalo pick. Yeah,
so that almost might give us an early look at what this pick might be.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying for the Flyers?
I know for sure. Yeah, I mean, pretty clear. Yeah, pretty clearly they thought there were, but I wonder with the board changing shape a little bit if that doesn't change their thinking. So we'll find out soon enough, I guess.
Yeah, so their pick is coming. There's a lot of just staring at the big.
Yes.
All the projections on the side of the sphere. I think they like Dickinson better than William. Be honest with you. I certainly do. The Flyers I'm talking about. So we'll see what the Sharks end up doing here. I don't know what's going on. Like I said, we don't have any volume.
Yeah, they're not doing a close up of the table of them on the phone either. So I'm not sure why it's a delay here.
I didn't know if it was going to be a commercial break or whatever. Did you fix the potato cam there, Andrew?
I tried something different. I launched a hotspot from my phone. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. I don't ask for a whole lot in this world. I just wanted this one night for the internet to work, and I got 1 hour of good internet, and then it just decided to just take the rest of the night off. I don't know. I guess it wanted a long weekend.
Your mom said that it was her fault. She said blame her.
What did she do?
I don't know. She just said blame her.
Okay.
She said you're trying to be online, and it's her fault. So
I'm definitely not taking any of the blame.
So
absolutely not. What did I miss?
A couple of picks. Salayev went to the Devils. Parikh went right before him to Calgary. You were here for Berkeley Catton, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So those
I was very disappointed with that.
Yeah, those are the only two picks that you missed then.
Okay.
And the Sharks are going up to make their next pick. And Bill and I were talking about this and saying, what made the Sharks want to get to this spot, one in front of the Flyers? So whoever they're picking here, they must think the Flyers wanted.
They wanted.
So I think they're going to take Dickinson, to be honest with you, because I know the Flyers wanted Dickinson.
Okay, so I think I'm okay with that though. If that means Hellenius is still there at 12, then
they took Sam Dickinson.
Okay.
Yeah. So that tells you they had good intel on their end.
Yeah. That was going to be Philly's guy if he was there.
That's who the Flyers wanted to take in that spot. So, but Williams is interesting. I don't know.
Buium or Hellenius, or unless they trade down, right? Which is nobody's traded anything yet.
Yeah.
Again with the big Norwegian defenseman, I think you could get him later.
That's why I thought trading down would be if they traded down, that's what they would do.
Right.
And who knows? They might still do that. We don't know what their board looks like, right? I mean, They might not have Buium or I know that they like Hellenius. I know they liked Yzerman. But if you feel like you can move back a few spots, then fine. The thing is that Buium, no one thought would be here.
Right.
And yet he is. So.
Right. Well, if you move back, let's say 3 spots, one of those 3 will be there for you. You would think. So.
Correct.
So if you're moving back, then what are you asking for in a trade then?
Probably a second round pick.
Yeah. That's usually the deal. Something.
Yeah. At this point, it's probably a second.
Right. And with the Flyers already having, let's say 2, we won't assume Columbus. If you have the 2 second rounders, maybe you move up to the earlier in the second round, 2 second rounders for an earlier second round.
Yeah.
Well, if they do pick Buium, though, be a great honor for the Philadelphia Flyers to take the first American in this year's draft. See this?
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
Right there, baby. I love my stars and bars.
Yeah.
Also say, worth noting, if they do end up going defenseman, I did have a stat prepared that I wanted to read to you. So from the beginning of the season until March 6th last year, which was the trade deadline, the Flyers were 11th in the league in goals against per game at 2.90.
Yeah.
Then the trade deadline happened, and they traded away Sean Walker.
Yeah.
From the trade deadline to the end of the season, the Flyers were 31st in the league in goals allowed per game at 3.95. So I think worth noting, and I know a lot of it had to do with the fact that Carter Hart had to leave the team. Sealer had the injury bug. Ristolainen had the injury bug as well. But after having traded away Sean Walker, I thought that the depth on the defensive end got exposed a little bit. So if they do get a high-end defenseman in the first round here, I'm okay. I would love Hellenius as well, but if they do get a high-end defenseman, I think I'm okay with that as well.
Did you see Danny sitting down there, or did he get up?
Yeah. I
I
just saw
thought
him
he
at the
was-
table a second ago.
They just showed him at the table. He's
Yeah.
he's on the phone. I think they're trading down. I really do. I really think this is a trade down. So it's. I mean,
I know.
it's what we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, clearly Danny's on the phone, so he's talking to the team here. So
yeah.
Oh boy! Oh my God! After all that,
it was funny because I talked to someone on Sunday within the organization, high up in the organization, who said, we're going to do everything we can to move up. But if you ask me right now what the best odds are that we trade down.
Yeah.
So,
and we'll see where they end up moving down to. So,
So our friend Jackie Spiegel just tweeted, Flyers on the clock. Looked like Danny Briere was talking to a table in the back, maybe St. Louis. Hard to see which one exactly from our position.
Yeah. So that's Barry. That's Barry Hanrahan, who's the assistant general manager. If people are watching, sometimes fans aren't as familiar with the secondary executives there. But he's this is definitely a trade. There's no way that they would let the clock hit 0 and Danny would still be.
Yeah. Unless they call a timeout, ask for more time. But
so
he's still at the table. So.
Do you think there's a chance that there are players moved around in this trade or just picks?
I can't imagine that there's a player going out. Drager just reported the trade's coming, so we'll see what it is. St. Louis is at 16. So if Jackie's right, St. Louis is back in the back of the room.
Like back 4.
Maybe you pick up a second round pick and you go down to 16.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I suggested at the beginning of this whole thing, if you were with us from the beginning, I said back then that they like Solberg, the Norwegian defenseman.
Yeah.
Maybe you move back, you get something, and you take that player. So we'll see what it is. How do the rules work here with this, Bill? Are you familiar? Because obviously the clock has run out on them.
Yeah, you can call a timeout. Basically, the clock stops. I don't know how long the timeout runs, but you can call a timeout. You're not forfeiting the pick. You can, especially if you have a trade agreed to. You're working out details.
Oh my God!
That's funny. But I'm saying, like, does the league say, so if you call in and say we have a trade confirmed with so-and-so, are you using your timeout or is the other team using their timeout?
You're using your timeout.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Well, I'm trying to read lips and I can't. So I'm having
his face is behind the microphone.
Yeah. I'm trying to see what they ended up doing, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to be happy with what they're doing because, like I said, there were 2 players they wanted, Demidov and Dickinson, both went, and yeah, I'm just. Let's see. So Barry's handling a lot of this.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything.
Maybe your TV is.
No, I mean I'm scrolling through Twitter and.
So Joe Papel. Let me point this out. Yeah, because he just asked. Yeah, ambulance. So I live on a road that is a direct line to a hospital that is about 4 minutes from my house. And I can't tell you how many times the police and fire and ambulances fly by. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so I think they just handed them the trade. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually turn up the volume here for a minute so we can hear it. Nope. Can't do that because I just accidentally hit the wrong button on my phone.
All right.
Genius.
Here's Gary Bettman at the podium now. Yeah, he's getting the hand up. Wait for the big moment coming. Draft history about to be
In
made.
Minnesota?
First trade horn.
Is it Minnesota?
Friedman just here it is right here from Cerro Valley. Flyers have traded number 12 to Minnesota in exchange for 13 and a 2025 third rounder.
So it's only one spot.
One spot. Whoever they won, obviously,
To Minnesota in exchange.
So they're only going to go back one spot.
Yeah.
And they picked up a third round pick. So
So St. Louis was just a red herring?
No, it was. They said it was somebody at the back of the room. But anyway,
yeah, and they could conceivably have spoken to both too, right? We have an offer. Yeah.
Yeah, they were probably talking to a number of teams and seeing who gave them the best offer to.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And so that they could still get the guy that they want. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
And maybe they look at it and say, we're happy with either guy.
Right.
So let's pick up an extra asset in the third round pick.
Right, because they're guaranteed to get one of the guys that's still on the board. We'll see who Minnesota takes here.
This I would have to assume is Boyan.
Yeah, it was zipping along at a really brisk pace still.
Danny slowed it all up for us.
Slowed it down, right?
Slowed it all up for us. Andrew Fawcett with a great line. Bill Guerin looks like drunk Joe Piscopo. That's funny. That is funny. Do you remember Bill when Bill Guerin was in with the Flyers on a tryout contract?
Yes, I remember that. I remember that really well, and they had quite an internal debate about whether to sign him or not.
Yeah,
right? They all obviously they did.
If I remember correctly, and tell me if I have this right. If I remember correctly, he actually continued practicing with them into the first week of the season.
That's correct.
Because they weren't sure what they wanted to do.
Right. And
then ultimately decided not to sign him.
They ultimately made the decision to not sign him. Yeah.
But he remained on a practice contract into the beginning of the season. So I wonder if Danny getting that third round pick next year means that he thinks he's getting the second round pick this year from Columbus.
Yeah. I mean, and this not being in this, people say, oh, well, they'll defer it, but next year's draft, and we'll see, we'll always see a year out, but next year's draft is supposed to be deeper than this year. So.
Yep. They took Boehm. Yep.
All right.
So maybe the Flyers still take Hellenius.
I think that's
still there, right? So
yeah,
which is good. So Michkov will have a center.
I don't know if do you look at Hellenius as a number one center, Bill?
No, I mean not in the traditional prototype number one center look. Again, because he's a little bit on the small side, but he could be a number one center, but a serviceable number one, right?
Yeah.
So
I look at him more as a number two.
Yeah.
Prospect center. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. but it's interesting now because the Flyers basically traded themselves out of drafting one of the named defensemen.
Yeah.
That everybody thought was going to, top 10 guys.
Yeah.
So
yeah, a little bit of draft history here where, you'll have a couple of Norwegians taking the first round. Zev's parents are both from Israel.
Yeah.
So he'll be the first player of direct Israeli extraction to be taken in the first round. So it's kind of cool to see, players from really different spots in the world filter into the draft. I think it makes it more interesting.
What would really drive people crazy is if Danny traded back again.
Traded back one more time, yeah.
Let's go back again.
Go back, St. Louis. Yeah, you still looking to move up?
Yeah. The Minnesota take your guy? If not,
my mom commenting about the Phillies for? Oh, they won.
Yeah, Phillies won 2-0. Christopher Sanchez complete game, 3-hit shutout.
Oh, yeah, they're gonna, with the DL, with the IL, pardon me, list getting crowded again. Need some wins to hang in there. Thankfully, they got to such a quick start that they could, withstand some of this. So, let's see.
Yeah, I don't know who else. Like I said, they're the only two names left, Bill, out of the list that I had gotten.
Yeah.
Hellenius.
Yeah.
He's still sitting. Danny's still sitting there at the table.
He's not doing this to us again, is he?
I'm just saying, he's still there at the table. 2.5 minutes to go. I'm telling you, it wouldn't surprise me.
Move back again. We'll see. Yeah, and we keep bringing up Yzerman, who, I always got the sense that only if they trade back, but I didn't even think it was one spot. I thought if they traded back several spots and he's still there. Again, he's kind of a divisive prospect, and I know they like his scoring ability, but the question is always, okay, so he gets you 30 goals, and he gets those 30 goals in 22 games. What does he give you those other 60 games if he's not scoring?
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
I think I had one other defenseman written down here, and I can't remember where you had him, Bill, in your mock draft, but it's Adam Juracek.
I had him at the end of the first round. Now, of course, his brother was just taken by Columbus a couple years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yeah,
2 years ago. The draft for the Flyers ended up taking Gauthier. Actually, remember they left Juracek on the board and they took Gauthier.
Okay. Do you think this is too early for him?
I think it's too early, only because he's strictly a defensive defenseman so far, right? And sometimes you can develop a comparable player maybe a little bit later. So, good prospects, but to me, to get the skill guys, you got to grab them earlier. Generally, unless there's some kind of skating issue or injury issues, or like, you're talking defenseman, but in forwards, like Connolly's highly skilled, but he's a divisive, controversial kind of a pick. Those are the kind of guys sometimes you can find a little bit later.
Okay.
Well, it's only 30 seconds left. And still nothing.
No, not approaching the table yet.
I think he's trading back again. He's doing it just to mess with us.
Yeah, not a lot of movement up to the towards the stage here, as the clock hits 0 again. He's on the phone again. He's on the phone again. He's talking into the speakerphone. there at the table. So this is probably another. No, they're good. No, now they're making the pick.
Okay.
Now they're making the pick. Well, here we go, folks. I think it's got to be Hellenius at this point. Like I said, they like Solberg, but I can't believe it's here.
Not without another trade back. I'd be pretty surprised.
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
We have a special guest to make our selection. Proud Philly native and Hall of Fame boxing announcer, Michael Buffer.
Michael Buffer. Okay.
No. Is that the best we could do? Is Michael Buffer?
They couldn't get Sliced alone or something?
I mean, I could see that, like, say Darren Rumble's kid was at the draft or something.
I'm gonna tell Danny next year. Say, proud Philly podcasters, get up there and make a pick for them.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Fantastic 7-game World Championship Stanley Cup final. It was a magnificent display of the excitement and talent that is the National Hockey League.
He's probably gonna. Is he really gonna? Is he gonna do the Rumble thing?
Doesn't he always?
Yeah.
And raised Philadelphian. For me, it is a thrill to announce this next selection for my hometown, Philadelphia Flyers. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble.
Well, he has to say it. It's like it's his trademark. He has to say it. All right, let's.
13th pick in the first round, the city of brotherly love welcomes the Philadelphia Flyers selection, weighing in officially at 187 pounds.
Oh my God.
Tall at 5'11", from the Quilt Storm, he is
Jelushenko.
That was excellent. Amazing.
Wow.
Wow, indeed.
That is a wow and a big wow.
Yes.
Like I had thought of him as potentially the pick 32.
Yeah. Yeah.
But hey, we'll see. I can never criticize a pick, right?
No, exactly. They've watched the players more times, right?
Far more than I ever would ever
Yeah.
have, right? So
You
I will never actually sit here and criticize a pick. But from what everybody was talking about for Lushenko, that he's a guy that they thought, okay, maybe they get him at 32.
Yeah. This is what I'll say. That I mean, once again, we were talking about like swingman types in the draft.
Yeah.
Can play center, can play wing, but here's the thing with him, he really excelled in the power play this year. Flyers definitely need guys who are kind of power play specialists to a degree, and I think that the skill level, and I mean I don't know. We'll see how he develops. Certainly Danny is not afraid to draft a smaller player. Yeah. Having obviously defied the odds himself as a small player. I guess we'll see how it works out in the long term. I'm wondering if Philly had been able to move back again, if that still would have been the target, because they still had, they still obviously had Yzerman on the board, and you still had Hellenius on the board. So
I wonder if they, and the reason that it took so long there a second time is I wonder if they try to trade back again.
Yeah.
And because they thought that they're like, okay, we like this kid a lot, and this is the guy we want to draft. And we know that he'll still be there in 3, 4, 5 spots, whatever. Let's see if we can get more and then still take him. And that obviously everybody wanted Bouillon, And that's why the teams that were reaching out and trying to trade up. And then once that pick happens and there's no other want to trade up to that spot.
Yeah.
Hey, like I said, we can't sit here and anybody who is sitting there, and I'll be honest, and I'll say this, and I love our fans and our listeners and people who are hanging with us tonight. The number that you see on your screen is fascinating to me, and that's great. We love the thousands of you who have checked in tonight. Anybody who is a fan who is sitting there reacting in her saying that this is horrible and horrendous and terrible, you don't know, and we don't know. We can't. I'm not going to sit here and try and BS you and say it's a great pick because I don't know. But I'm also not going to. I'm also not going to sit here and tell you it's a horrible pick because we don't know.
No, right? And listen, I mean, presumably it's going to be 2 years, so he's in the NHL.
Yes.
And see how his draft +1 and draft +2 go. If he plays World Juniors, right? If he has a little bit of a growth spurt, add some weight, all those things you look for in the development side. And you don't know on draft day. There's very few, there's very few guys that are slam dunks on draft day.
Right.
And I wouldn't be sure. I just saw. I wouldn't be sure at 5'8" that he's going to play center though. Because he already plays his share of wing. I think that I think he ends up potentially on a wing, which is fine. Again, you need quality players. Period. Centers, wingers, defensemen, whatever. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And I know people are asking for. Us to say, tell us anything about this guy, and other than the fact that he's small or, that he's, is a small and speedy little center, and maybe he doesn't end up playing center or whatever the case might be. So here's the best that I can do for you. And again, because like I said, we've not seen him. All right. TSN's final rankings and Bob McKenzie gets together with a collection of scouts and evaluators from the NHL and from around hockey for several, many years. And they do a ranking of the prospects. Okay. They had Jet Luchenko ranked 19th overall. So it's right. Not like you're sitting there saying, oh my God, what a ridiculous reach to go from 19 to 13. That was the collective had him ranked 19th. Okay, so it's not like it's some ridiculous thing that he was 38th or something and they picked him at 13.
And also again, he one thing that I do know is a very good playmaker and very good in the power play. They're looking to develop power play guys, and I know he has a rep as being a high energy guy. I watch a lot more of London this year than I watch of Guelph, but it's not that much of a reach. I guess the question mark is who you left on the board to take him. That remains to be seen.
Yeah, exactly. And we won't know. We won't ultimately know for 3 to 5 years if this was a good pick or a bad pick, right? I mean, that's when we'll really know in comparison to the other players and where they project. Continued stuff from that same analysis. He's projected as a two-way second line center. Craig Button's analysis, subtly good skills, strong understanding of how to create advantages everywhere, beats the drum quietly. He's got a 4 out of 5 skating, 4.5 out of 5 hockey sense. That's always a good number. 4.5 out of 5 competitiveness, also always a good number. 4 out of 5 offensive play, 4 out of 5 shots. So I mean, you're getting a solid prospect. I know people probably had their aim at other prospects that were there, and likely because you guys heard them being talked about by people like us, to be fair. So that's the only way I put it. I mean, I can't sit there and say, did I expect this? No. Did I have an inkling of this for this spot in the draft? No. I flatly admit that. I got to expect that everybody that you talk to or everybody you listen to, whether it's this show, whether it's Bill, talking with Jason or and Brian on the Flyer show, whether you're listening to Charlie on PH and Bill on PHLY, no matter which show you're listening to, you probably didn't hear Jet Luchenko as a guy that was being considered here. And so that's why it's like, oh, it's such a bad pick. And it very well may be. Maybe you all are right. But I caution the negative response to it right away. I just do. I do caution it. And don't compare it. Here's a comment. I want to pull this one up. Wash Boy. And it isn't that you're getting a bad pick or whatever here. It's that there were more clear-cut options. The Galaxy Brain stuff is shades of Ron Hextall's is how we got Jay O'Brien. I don't think you're getting a Jay O'Brien here. I just don't. You're getting a player that had a really good first-round rating. Jay O'Brien didn't have a first-round rating.
Yeah, he was playing prep school in New England. So, but here's there's a lesson in that too, right? O'Brien tore up a very low level of competition. And sometimes you worry about that low level of competition when it works out, like you should have overlooked it. Sometimes you take the player who dominated a lower level and he can't translate it to a higher level. When O'Brien was picked, and you go back and watch it on YouTube, there were teams that liked them in the latter part of the first round. Now, Keandre Miller seemed like a no-brainer pick in that spot. Sometimes you got, if you like a guy enough, you step up on him. And sometimes you're going to strike out. Sometimes it's not going to work out. Sometimes, sometimes you're kicking yourself for passing on the junior A kid, the prep school kid, if he works out. And other times, thank goodness some other team took him. So it's the inexact science of a draft. And that's just the truth. Also, I want to say this too. In fairness to Hexy and the prior regime, if you go back to the hockey news Future Watch issue, right, which is a poll of scouts around the league, scouting directors, so you can't vote for yourself. In the scouting director poll in, I think it was 2018, Flyers finished second league-wide in prospect pool. The next year they finished first. So the whole league thought they had a hell of a group of prospects, and one by one, most of them kind of fell by the wayside, one or another. But you can't reinvent history to go, everybody knew that, their prospect pool was going to be a bust, because that's not accurate. It's just sometimes how development goes. Sometimes a player gets hurt, and Flyers certainly had some bad luck with injuries with prospects. And sometimes you go back and, you bypass on somebody who you should have taken. It's the nature of the draft. That's how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is with few exceptions, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah,
it really is. And I get it, because we were all unprepared for this pick, right? We were all unprepared for it. So I get why everybody would be frustrated by not being prepared for it. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's right, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. So let's give it a shot, see what happens. Because let's say this, I'll throw this out there. What happens, Bill, and Andrew, you can chime in too. Let's say Jet Luchenko, all of a sudden, 2 years from now, comes in and he's great. Not great, like Hall of Fame level great, but like he's really good, like better than you thought. Like, Oh my God, he's an exciting rookie and everything. Does everybody change their mind? Does everybody then suddenly say, oh, I read that wrong. They were right.
People like to just pretend like they never criticized it in the first place.
Right. So,
which, by the way, I'm guilty of that also. So
we all are.
We all do. Yeah. Well, right, one of the things is we all retro draft too.
Yes.
We all look back at old drafts. Why did you miss on so and so? And then you go back and and you always have to you always had to focus on the misses anyway, right? But well, why did every team pass on this guy twice, or whatever the case may be, or the whole league was wrong around, about this player, and it's just, but we all do it. We all look at you should have taken so and so. Again, we'll see how it works. Maybe it's a miss, maybe it's a double, maybe it's a home run. I don't know. We'll see in time.
I'm going to respond to this guy who's because so afraid to put his real name. But
I think his real name is Markel Fultz.
Markel Fultz wants to sit there and say we're gaslighting the fans. Let me tell you something, bud. We are not gaslighting anybody. I did not sit here and say this was a good pick. I did not say it was a bad pick. I don't know what this pick is. I have no idea. I've not watched the kid play, okay? But to sit here and say that, they should have absolutely taken Zeev Buium, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a disgrace that they didn't make that pick. How do you know?
Were you Markel Fultz even watching the under 18s, which would have been time? Were you watching the Frozen Four? I want to know how many times you watched him play that that he's going to hit. You just know it, right?
Boy,
you know it.
You're misreading.
Okay,
you're misreading.
So there's no gaslighting going on. I am not sitting here trying to defend the pick. All I'm saying is we cannot criticize now because we don't know. I mean, and I'm sure that there's going to be people who do follow these players. There's going to be people out there who are who look at these prospects and who will put out a review of the draft and say, here's who did well, here's who didn't.
The instant reaction and the kind of consensus, the pundit consensus was he was a latter part of the first round to early second round guy, and that was the consensus. But there's a reason why your scouts are out watching him all season long. We will see how it works. You open yourself up for the instant second guessing, but you're gonna you'll wait and you'll see over time. And also you'll see who you get with the latter part of the first round too, because there's some Russian players out there, for example, that we'll see how it plays out, but just give it time. That's all. Yeah. Nobody's saying it's a great pick or a bad.
And who knows? Maybe Solberg falls. Yeah. Or maybe they move up from 32. Maybe they find a way to move up from 32 to a couple picks up, and they get somebody else that they like. Who knows? And who knows if that pick's any good? That might be a good pick. Might be a bad pick. We don't know. None of us know. So. I love it. I love this. I love this jackass too, because this guy just can't stop himself. I think he's I think somebody hurt him so badly at Comcast. Somebody crushed his soul so badly at Comcast that he hates everything about Comcast and the Flyers. So I hope that you're absolutely wrong, John, Evan. I hope you're absolutely wrong. And I don't root. Right? I try and stay objective, but anything that makes you wrong will make me happy. Just so you know. Just so you know. Okay.
Hate to say it. One of the trivia questions that I asked when you were in Florida last year, Ant, so you missed it, was when we were playing the Sharks, and the question was about how in 2003 the Flyers and Sharks traded draft picks. And the Sharks used that 7th round draft pick in 2003, and it ended up being Joe Pavelski.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes, I know the story with this. So yes, the Flyers traded. They traded up around that year, or for the next year, they traded a higher round pick, and the guy they traded for was known for only one thing, and the late round pick that the Flyers traded, of course, was Joe Pavelski, borderline Hall of Famer. And the only thing Ladislav Skurko, who the Flyers got with that trade, is remembered for was he murdered a referee and buried his body in the forest. That's the only thing he's known for.
I forgot about that.
What do you do?
I forgot about that.
I actually didn't know that when I asked the question too. That would have been good information to have.
Ladislav Skurka. I forgot that he did that. That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm sure had Evan been on Twitter, then he would have questioned that 6th and 7th round exchange too, because he knew that 7th rounder was just gonna, be one they rude. So
Yeah. Well, so just I don't want to. We're not going to stick through the entire first round. I mean, it took us 2 hours to get through to pick 13. So we're not going to stick around another 2 hours to wrap this thing up. But I'll leave it with this and say to you, Bill, as we look ahead to pick 32, because if you had to say positionally, do you think that they look at it and say, all right, we got a center at 13. This draft is deep in defensemen. Maybe we go defense at that.
I mean, potentially so. I think that, and there's some players, from the U.S. National Development Program. They seem to draft from a lot. They can go with a D. But, I still think that they're willing to be aggressive sometimes with Russian prospects, and I think there might be a few there. So I would keep an eye on that. But a D is certainly makes sense. Just like last year, right, where they went with Bonk with their second pick of the first round. I think that's a logical way to go.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to keep keep watching and keep seeing what happens there. Yeah. All right. So look, I will say we're probably a little bit surprised at the pick. I don't know if anybody's going to be sold on it at this point. By the way, St. Louis took Jiricek, intern Andrew. Hey, thanks, bud. Thanks for putting on your hat backwards, just like your dad.
You got it, Pops.
Very good.
You got it.
Yeah, very good. Very good. We were a little bit surprised, but you know what? We'll have to. There'll be a lot to talk about going forward with this team and see where they're at. You mentioned some of those. I don't know. The only other name that I've kind of heard another London guy, Bill.
Yeah.
Just to throw it out there, is Sam O'Reilly.
And he progressed a little bit like Barkey, where he, where he got a lot more ice time as the season went along, had a good playoff, so he kind of rose in the latter part. So, as you said, a London guy, so another name potentially to watch.
Yeah. We'll see what happens here. I'm gonna be curious with the Solberg kid, see what happens there. It's a name I know they like, and I like I said, O'Reilly because of London, and you mentioned the Russians, which might be actually a little bit later, might be second round that they look at those Russian players. It's always interesting with the Flyers. That's the one thing I'll say. You never know what's going to happen with this team. And it'll be interesting to hear from Danny as well when he talks about why they made this pick. He's not going to talk until after the first round is over, so we probably won't get anything until the end, until late tonight. But at the same time, we'll stay on top of it. And next time we have a Snow the Goalie, we'll have Russ and Bundy back. Russ will probably, toot the horns of all the people who are criticizing this draft pick. Bundy will say, hey, they don't even have hair on their balls yet. They're only 17 years old. Who cares? Like, that'll be the thing that he says. And so it'll be a great episode. So don't miss it.
Russ loves trades, though, so he must be happy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They made a trade, so he's got to be thrilled. We want to thank. Looks like we had over 6,300 people join us tonight, which is fantastic. Thank you very much for taking part in this show with us. Thanks to Bill Meltzer for sitting in with us for a couple of hours. It was awesome to have you, Bill. Love having you on the program. Intern Andrew did your best, Russ. You did your best, Russ. Even had trivia questions.
I did my best, but I'm out of gas.
Yeah, you're done.
That's enough.
2 hours. 2 hours of NHL draft is enough for you. It's enough.
I ran out of notes. Hold on.
Look, that's all your notes, huh? One page? You have one page of notes? Good stuff.
All right, thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. Like I said, don't forget to listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, hit the like button. It helps us here on YouTube. and for future episodes, getting people like you to see us talking all about the Flyers here on Snow the Goalie. For Bill, for Andrew, I'm Anthony. See you guys.